So that's a bit of a look at Brisbane and the water supply issue.
All right, we'll leave that media conference there. Campbell Newman speaking in Brisbane. For our Queensland viewers, they will continue to watch that. For the rest of us, though, let's head to Sydney, where there's certainly been a lot of rain in the past 24 hours. Mark Burrows joins us. Mark, record falls, in fact, for some areas.
Indeed, Wendy. Given what's been going on in Queensland, I think, though, you could say Sydney escaped relatively unscathed. There were predictions of high winds overnight and a lot of rain. Well, the winds really didn't eventuate. They got up to about 70 kilometres per hour in the city, but there was a lot of rain, as you say. About 160 millimetres fell in Frenchs Forest, and a record for rain, the heaviest rainfall in 15 years at Richmond, of 112 millimetres. So lots of rain and several road closures around the city this morning, really making it difficult for commuters to get to work. However, the rain did ease up early this morning, and a lot of those road closures the roads have now been opened. Big swells still hitting our shores, though. Waves of up to 3 metres have been bashing the coastline. At Tamarama, it was quite a sight. Several experienced surfers were out there, being towed out there to enjoy the waves with a big crowd looking on. So all in all, Wendy, Sydney really has dodged a bullet. There were a few trees down. Some 500 calls were responded to by the SES, but given there were predictions of a monster storm that was going to hit Sydney, I think we got off relatively lightly.
All right, Mark Burrows there in our Sydney newsroom. Thank you for that. Speaking of getting off relatively lightly, in Brisbane, the river peaked early this afternoon. Thankfully, though, lower than those original predictions we were hearing. Joel Dry is monitoring levels by the riverside. Joel, what's been happening there?
Well, Wendy, it began this morning as probably a pretty cautious and worrying time for the residents here in Fairfield, an inner city suburb, but it's now turned this afternoon to one of a more relaxed vibe. Slowly the floodwaters are starting to recede. As you said, they didn't quite reach their peak that was predicted at 2.5 metres. They got to around about 2 metres, which was great news for the number of homes that live here directly on the river. This one here that we can see behind me, they actually suffered some really extensive flooding in 2011. The water went right through their first floor and damaged a whole lot of property and things like that. So no doubt they were very nervous as these flood waters began to rise yesterday. They took precautions. They moved stuff up off that lower level and did whatever they can. But it was a very stressful night. So there's a lot of homeowners here that were particularly pleased to hear that we didn't quite make our level. It was still a very worrying time. In fact, the owner of that house said they'd just moved in not that long ago. They bought the house from a couple who had gone through the 2011 floods and thought that was enough for them. They got out. So the people who bought that house, they thought they were safe for at least a decade or so. So it was a very stressful time for them as they watched the river rise. We had a chat to them this morning. Let's have a listen.
We think that the worst might be over. So compared to we weren't here for the last floods. Our neighbours across the street were, and they say that this is nothing compared to the last flood. So we personally have been very, very fortunate. Yeah.
So now you can go back to enjoying your view instead of fearing it.
That's right. It's absolutely beautiful on the river, and we definitely enjoy the view most of the time. But it's a bit scrappy right now. But
it'll come back.
It'll come back. It'll come back. It's beautiful here.
So Joel, what about the current there? That could pose some dangers, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely right. The floodwaters perhaps haven't done as much damage as they thought they might here in Brisbane, but it is still a very dangerous stretch of water. It's moving so rapidly just due to the large volumes of water that have been put into the system. And now as that tide begins to recede and the flood waters go down, all that water rushes out very rapidly to sea, and it makes it a very fast current. We were up in the chopper this morning over the top of Brisbane when that initial morning tide was running out, and it was evident just how dangerous it was. There was a large number of local jetties and boats that had all broken their moorings and were very dangerous. We saw one boat smash into another yacht, and a whole lot of pontoons and things like that just float very dangerously down the river. So it is still a tense time for people. We're being warned to stay off the river. It's not this whole dangerous weather situation isn't quite done yet, but the good news for most of the people on the Brisbane River and in those Brisbane River flood areas is that we seem to have dodged a very big bullet, and now they can just look forward to these river levels completely going down, and they can begin the clean-up, albeit like the people here, just a clean-up of their front yard, which is a welcome relief. Wendy.
Indeed, Joel. Michelle, thanks very much for that update. Well, still ahead on 9 News now, we'll go live to Ipswich, where there's a huge sense of release at the moment. The city has been spared major flood damage. We'll have the details next.